This is a fun sermon series that we're kind of getting started with. Goes back to a book that I read years ago. Everything I ever needed to know, I learned in kindergarten. How many of you have read that or heard about that? I mean, so many of the values that we carry through life are formed in those years, which is another reason why it's such a blessing that we have a wonderful early childhood school and elementary and middle school here to be a part of that partnership in faith formation and value development with our kids. Because I have to say that some of the things that kids are learning today are not things we really want them to say years ago. I learned it in kindergarten. I learned that way of life, that set of code of conduct, that set of beliefs I learned in kindergarten, only to find out where that takes our world. I was really grateful to Pastor Jacob last week, gave me permission with his sermon on take a nap every day to take a nap right away after church. I waited till the sermon was over because it was a good one, and then I guess I'd never need permission for that. But hope you have found a way to create some Sabbath in your life. And today we're going to move to playing fair with everyone. How many people think that's important, right? That's important for our kids, for us as well. We have one bad example to share with you of playing fair with everyone.
Today at Dad v Girls, we set up hidden cameras. We invited over Andre, which is Casey and Grace's cousin, and we played 3 games with him to see if he would cheat. Now Casey and Grace have to guess. 1, would he cheat? And 2, there's a special question for each game. So let's watch what the first challenge was for Andre.
So Casey and Grace have already had their go, and they've put their score up there. So Casey got 10 bricks, and Grace got 12 bricks. So you've got to try and beat their bricks. Okay, but you have to build them like this, up, tall. Okay, so 5 tries, and then write your number down.
So Casey and Grace, did Andre cheat? Casey?
Yes, obviously.
Grace?
Yes.
We know he's going to cheat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but then the second question is, what score did he write on the board? So there was 10 and 12 for you written on the board. Whoever gets the closest number wins a point.
Yeah.
Casey?
I think maybe 40.
40?
Yeah.
40?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
We're talking about Andre, Dad.
Yeah, that's true. You probably wrote 3 million.
31.
31. Okay, cool. Let's watch and see.
You win!
It was up to his, so I had to go like that.
Did you?
Okay, so 39, Casey won. So you've got 2 points, you got 1 point because you both...
Okay, he didn't put 13, right? We would beat somebody by 1. Somewhat believable. No, 39 blocks. And he even makes up a story about how he had to jump to put them up there. I don't know if he's made it to kindergarten yet, but he hasn't learned much about fairness, right? These other folks are getting cheated on, I think, when he puts down 39. And it's funny because, hey, we know he's probably going to learn what fairness is over these next few years. He's not a monster, right? He's just a kid. He'll learn it as people start to, say 39's a little implausible, dude. Let's get real, and he'll start to figure that out. But fairness is a big issue, not just for kids. It's for all of us, all of our lives. It is absolutely not fair that I put 3 balls in the water on hole 14 in the Pastor's Masters. Not fair at all. It's not fair when I got up this morning and I saw that my neighbor's guest who stayed overnight parked his car squarely on my lawn. Okay? Now, it's all right to put your car 2 tires on, Or perhaps you could park your car on the lawn of the home you're staying at. All the men are nodding. You get this, right? They're parking on my lawn. I mow that thing. I take care of that thing. It's not fair. Park on your own lawn, right? It's not fair when I grabbed Time magazine this morning and I looked to see the woman on the cover works 3 jobs and sells blood plasma, all for the privilege of being a public school teacher. It's just not fair, right? Am I getting warm? It's not fair that we have 486,000 African American prisoners in our prison system and 439,000 white prisoners. In case anybody has noticed, African Americans make up 12% of our population outside prison and 33% in. There's something that doesn't sound right about that. It's not fair that 795 million of God's children don't have enough to eat to function well on a daily basis. That's not fair either. It's funny when it has to do with blocks in the game. It gets harder and harder when we assess how fair are we playing in this world? When there's 795 million people hungry and I'm having trouble buttoning my blazer at the first service. Now, I don't know what to do with that. I don't have an immediate answer to all the unfair things in the world. Of course not. But I do have one thing, and that is I have the responsibility to think about it, to pray about it, and maybe to find a way to play more fairly. I think that's the opportunity for all of us. For all of us. And it's something we learned in kindergarten, and we need to keep remembering. Now, how do we get to fairness? We're not really born with fairness. This is what we're born with, right? What we're born with is a very simple idea of fairness. It's one word: mine. Mine. It's our primary focus for young children to take what I want, to have it when I want it, how I want it, and where I want it. And maybe that's built in so that the kids that needed to survive have an instinct to do so. They don't wait for something to happen, they go for it. We all know they'll grow out of that. It's probably where we start. Unfortunately, sometimes we go back to where we started, don't we? When we start to think that everything we have is ours, when nothing we have is ours, right? Fundamental understanding of being a Christian is that nothing we have is ours. Everything we have is what God has given to us. You may have worked hard for it. God bless you. Thank you. But a lot of people work hard. This public school teacher is working 3 jobs and donating plasma, for God's sake. Okay? So we have to watch that tendency because it's where we started in life. Mine. It's mine. Give me what I want and what I need. Fairness is only if it's fair to how I feel. As long as I feel it's fair. Not whether it's fair in any objective shared consciousness, which kids that age don't have, right? They don't know if you're offended by their selfishness, right? Parents like, oh my gosh, my kid is just like a monster, right? Look what the kid's doing. Don't worry, parents, right? You all saw it. You helped them through it. They moved beyond it. We all can move beyond it. It's where we start. It doesn't have to be where we finish. Thank God for most people it is. But there are some people that seem to revert to this all the time. I know I do when I worry about a car on my grass. Gut level, Andy, really. Those are Susan's exact words. Really. Really. And she's right, really. What does it matter? Why do I hold on to that? Because that's where I started, right? That's where I started. It's not where I want to end up. It's not where any of us really want to end up. And how do we get somewhere? Well, we have some techniques parents use, society uses to try to straighten this out, right? You know, if you're not playing fair, you might have time out to think about it. If you're playing fair, you might get praise. This is how people grow out of total selfishness, unfairness, is that they start to get shaped by good people around them, or sometimes bad people around them. Because obviously some people learn to live not fair all the time, right? They don't care about fairness at all. But ideally speaking, praise and punishment straighten us out. I mean, God gave us, after all, the 10 Commandments, right? You know, 6 of the 10 Commandments are all about how we play fair with others, right? Don't steal, don't lie, don't kill, don't covet what others want. The majority of the 10 Commandments and the majority of the rest of the laws that follow have to do with how do we play fair with one another. God knows we need those. We need to pass them on to our kids. We need to really remember that playing fair, there are rules that God has given us to help us do that. Guidelines. Just like any sport we play, there's boundaries, there's penalties, there's goals. Now Jesus says the stakes for this are not just sort of optional, like I'll play fair if I feel like it, right? No, the stakes are rather high, actually. And this one makes me tremble kind of in my boots because I just don't match up to this. The final judgment Jesus describes as the master separates what? The sheep from the goats. How is that determined? Is it by gender? Is it by color? Is it by race? No. How's it done? I was hungry. Did you give me food or did you not give me food? I was thirsty. Did you give me something to drink or did you not give me something to drink? I was naked. Did you give me clothing or did you not give me clothing? I was sick and in prison. Did you visit me or did you not visit me? The final sorting out has to do with fairness. Were we fair in our lives? Now, I don't want to confuse this with salvation. Salvation is given not by our deeds, but by the death of Christ on the cross. But our relationship with God, if we want to please God, if we want to live according to God's ways and wills, He's giving us the guidelines here. He's saying, listen, it matters if you play fair. No excuses. None of us get a pass for the 795 million people who are hungry. We don't get a pass. We might not all be able to solve it. I get that. But none of us get a pass. None of us get a pass when anything is unfair. It's our concern, Jesus, all of our concern. He gave a parable that's even more chilling, perhaps, as he talked about a rich man who every morning he got up and he walked out of his house. What did he have to do? He had to step over the doormat. What was the doormat? Lazarus. Lazarus laying there every day. I don't know, is Lazarus there, brought by his friends, so maybe the person with some resources could maybe help him out? Maybe. He stepped over. How often do we step over? How often do we pass by? Not my deal. There is Lazarus right there. Well, Jesus says these things have consequences. In Jesus' story, the rich man goes where it's hot, Lazarus goes where it's cool. The rich man says, could Lazarus come down and just touch my tongue with some water? And Abraham says, oh no, there's a chasm. Remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, he says, while Lazarus received bad things. Now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. There are consequences, which is really, if you think about it, very good, because we do better with consequences, don't we? If we know this matters, it's better, right? It'd be a better world. Does anybody argue if there was nobody hungry, it would be a worse world? No one argues with that. No one argues with if things were fairer, they would be better. So this gives us some juice, some motivation. Because when we align ourselves with fairness, we align ourselves with the Lord. This is an experience many moms and dads go through for a stage with their kids, as constantly, over and over, they hear those wonderful words, "It's not fair. It's not fair." If you have 2 kids, this is the general refrain you will have until you go to your great reward. It never ends. In one way, shape, or form, everybody's counting, everybody's looking, everybody wants to know they're getting theirs. Now, at the next stage in development, the first stage is the mind. The next stage of development, it's a healthy stage. It's let's make things equal, right? Let's make things equal. And this is borne out in a little trick that psychologists have given parents to use when they run into these situations where people say it's not fair. He's got this, she's got that. They use a cookie as an example. You got a cookie. You cut, she picks. You cut, she picks. Right? So you get the cookie. You get to cut it. But she gets to pick which piece she wants. How equal do you think things suddenly get? Huh? How equal? Pretty equal, right? Have you ever seen a diamond cutter at work? So kids take a cookie, like a diamond cutter, right? As they move beyond, it's all about me. They still want to make sure they get their fair share. And fair share is a good concept. A lot of our world could be better if we operated simply on fair share. What's fair for us to share with one another? If we think about that, at least we're to the point of what a psychologist named Kohlberg says of conventional ethics. Conventional ethics. Let's be fair. Let's everybody get a decent piece. And we don't always agree with that, but I think most of us kind of like to operate that way. We kind of like to see that as a positive. People in an experiment were given $100, and they were told that they would be able to give to another person a portion of that $100. If that person agreed to the offer, they both got to keep their money. Okay? So the person got $100. If the person doesn't agree to the offer, nobody gets anything. One shot. You got $100. You can't keep all 100 of it because they're never going to say, that offer's okay. How much do you have to give them? How much do you have to give them till they'll say yes to the offer? Well, all of you guys that are like economically minded say, well, it makes sense. If the offer is for $1, it's better to have $1 than not. One of my members at the last service said, I'd have gone for 20, 80-20. Hey, better than nothing, right? Do you know that people on average say no to an offer $30 or less? In other words, you say, hey, I'll give you 30 of this 70, and they say, no, thank you. Now, that doesn't make economic sense, but it makes sense if inside here is a sense of what? Fairness. That was just rude of you. What was the right cut? Yeah, it's somewhere closer to 50-50. People actually agree to an offer of around 40-60, the 40-60 split. I mean, they understand you got the 100. They know you're in the power seat, but they want their share. So it's in us then, and it's like I said, culturally, our parents, it's in us to say things should be fair, somewhat fair. But now I want to go beyond that because that doesn't quite work in every situation. It doesn't work in a situation where you move into this concept, which is a very significant part of our life, which is called meritocracy. That is, you get what you deserve. You get what you deserve. Okay? You work hard, you get more. Go to school, get a degree, you get more. Work 2 jobs, you get more. You got less, it's probably because you're lazy or don't deserve it. It's a pretty simple thing. It works really well. It gets me up in the morning, right? Get to work, get busy, right? That's probably how most of us think. Get up every morning. But how does it work overall? Jesus is a little concerned about that kind of thinking when he brings up a story about the vineyard. The vineyard is ready to be harvested, and the owner of the vineyard goes out and he brings people in the morning to start harvesting, and they're picking grapes and they're picking grapes. He looks, I can't get this job done with this crew. He goes back out in mid-morning, gets another crew in. They're picking now. They got 2 crews picking, and he still can't get this thing done. He goes out early afternoon and gets some more people. They're picking. Now they're all picking. The last group comes in. They've got like an hour or 2 to go. He brings in the last group. He says, picking. At the end of the day, they all line up. You know the story, right? What does he do? 1 for you, and 1 for you, and 1 for you, and 1 for you, and 1 for you. Guy over here is going, huh? I worked all day. Did I promise you this? Yes. What's your problem? I gave you what I promised. Are you going to hold it against me that I want to give the same amount to this person? Are you going to hold it against my generosity? See, the new standard of fairness, I'm not saying this is a new economy. I'm not an economics teacher. As a pastor, I'm just saying, Jesus looks at this situation and says, folks, fairness may not always match up with economic systems. Fairness has to be somewhere deeper. You know the people that come in last on these situations, you know who they were? The lame, the old, the young. No one higher than the rest of the day. They've been hanging around at the 7-Eleven, waiting for a chance. They worked. So they worked an hour. They worked. And he wants to give them the same. It gives us a different understanding of fairness now. Fairness doesn't necessarily relate to the person you're being fair with. Fairness now is in here. I think it's fair. And God thinks it's fair that we all get blessed. And isn't that fortunate? We always joke with Sergio, he doesn't believe that at the very end of life, a bad person who never believed in Jesus could confess at the last second and be saved. We talk about it all the time. We tried to convince him, no, Sergio, it's true. It's true. It's not the ideal way to do it because you miss out on all the fun of being a Christian the whole life. But if at the very end of time, Stephen Wright gets on his knees and says, please forgive me, guess what? Be forgiven. Stairway to heaven, baby. You can't fake God out. You got to mean it, right? It's got to be true. Isn't that great to know? And isn't it great to know that God's sense of fairness has more to do with his heart and his desire to bless us than what we deserve? Isn't it great that he's unfair? Isn't it great? So how does that soften our hearts? How does that touch us to say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe fairness is something else. Maybe it's like living in a world that's a little different than the world that I work in every day. Living in a world that maybe looks out to take care of people who need it. To play fair beyond any sense of 50-50 splits. In the story of the unmerciful servant, we see this plays out even more. Okay, there we go. In the unmerciful servant, the king forgives a large debt that someone has. Large debt. Massive, unpayable debt. That person turns right around and refuses to forgive a small debt owed to him. The master's furious. And so we have a sense of how God feels about it. All my sins forgiven. All that I've been given. And I really can't care about somebody Somebody in need? Somebody hurting? Someone lost? I really can't find it in my heart when God found space in his heart for me? Of course I can. I'm going to act like God. I can't be God, but I'm going to act like God. I'm going to act that way. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm not going to base my fairness all the time on what you've done. I'm going to base my fairness on what is right to do. And that's to take care of each other, and to love our neighbor, and to love our enemies, and to take care of those who are in need. Thank goodness this man didn't weigh out the economic advantage of helping an old lady on her way down a subway, overly burdened with bags and a dog. He stops. He cares. That makes no sense. It's not his problem. It's not his color. It's not his deal. But he stops. We stop. We might never get to Australia, but we care about Australia. You might never go to Haiti, but you care about Haiti. You might never need it, but you care that Boca Helping Hands takes care of other people. It's just who we are. It's who we become. It's beyond conventional ethics. They call it post-conventional. I don't think that's a great word. I think it's called love, which just doesn't have to be fair. You don't have to be limited to 50-50. You could give it all away if you want. And so this helps us as we focus on issues in our lives. The fairness. If we stick in the very earliest stages of fairness, then we live a life of selfishness, totally unaware of the needs of others and not even caring. I know it's a safe place to hibernate sometimes because the needs are overwhelming. Remember, you don't have to do everything, but everybody needs to do something to get those scales balanced. What will it look like in your life? What does it look like now? Can you be proud of how it looks? Is there room for more fairness? And isn't it fun when we play fair? Isn't it fun to see what the game looks like? When even the people called in the last hour are blessed. Jesus is figured in the servant Isaiah speaks of. Isaiah 42. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him. He will bring justice to the nations. It's not just about salvation. Salvation is the final and the best. That's been given. Our job is justice, fairness. He will not falter or be discouraged till he establishes justice on earth. Neither should we be. While we have breath and time, we remember a God who doesn't play fair with us. Redefines what fairness is and says to us, I'm going to write the law on your heart now. Let that tell you. Let my son show you how to play fair with others. Amen.